I will preface this with the fact that unnatural movements freak me out. A lot. My husband and I were laying in bed one night when we heard a noise. Nothing crazy, just a small rustling noise. We argued over who should check it out, decided it was nothing, and then tried to go back to sleep. We then heard the noise again. What the hell? You go, he said. No, you go, I said. While we were arguing in whispers because my daughter's room had an adjoining door, we heard it again near the foot of our bed. I turned on my phone to use as a light and saw my daughter on the floor. She was on all fours. She cocked her head, turned her face towards the light at almost a disturbing angle, and then fucking skittered on all fours back to her room and into her bed. My husband and I were absolutely horrified, terrified, pissing ourselves. She was sleepwalking. She did creepy sleepwalky things after that for years, usually while we were watching a scary movie or lying in bed in the dark. Kids are the worst. A teenage boy drove his date to a dark and deserted lover's lane for a makeout session. After turning on the radio for mood music, he leaned over and began kissing the girl. A short while later, the music suddenly stopped and an announcer's voice came on, warning in an urgent tone that a convicted murderer had just escaped. The announcer continued to say that he had escaped from the state insane asylum, which happened to be not very far. He announced that if anyone noticed a strange man lurking about with the hook in place of his right hand, should immediately report his whereabouts to the police. The girl became frightened and asked to be taken home. The boy, feeling bold, locked all the doors instead, and ensuring his date they would be safe, attempted to kiss her again. She became frantic and pushed him away, insisting that they leave. The boy finally jerked the car into gear and spun its wheels as he pulled away. When they arrived at the girl's house, she got out of the car and, reaching to close the door, began to scream uncontrollably. The boy ran to her side to see what was wrong, and there, dangling from the door handle, was a bloody hook. My husband and I lived in a small, unincorporated town on the outskirts of a bigger city. Although we were almost 50 years old, we are 30 to 40 years younger than any of our new neighbors. Most of them have grandchildren who visit regularly and drive them wherever they need to go. Not so for the man I usually just called Professor. His wife Elena died 12 years ago. I only knew her briefly, but she and the professor were one of those life goals kind of couples. I loved spending time with them. They were both so well educated and witty, and clearly still deeply in love. Elena's passing hit her husband pretty hard. For the last year he had been battling cancer, with no bus service in our countryside area, and cabs from town are expensive. They're long to wait, so I ended up driving him to the doctor's. The professor had been in the US since he was 20, but he still retained a charming foreign accent. My name he pronounced as On A. Usually when he phoned me he would say, "Good afternoon, On A." Sometimes he would call in the wee hours in pain, able to only gasp, "On." I would drop the phone and run to his house to help him with his meds or take him to the city's emergency room. He was adamant about not staying away from home. He knew the end was near and he wanted to go in his own bed. On October 1st at almost 4 a.m., my cell phone rang, showing the professor's number. When I answered, a strange voice asked, "On A?" "Yes," I answered. "Professor?" "No," the voice giggled. "This is Maria. I'm taking him tonight." Then I woke up. I was sitting up in bed with the phone in my hand. My husband and our dog were sleeping soundly. So the phone hadn't really rang, or had it? I started to call the professor, but he was managing to get some sleep. I didn't want to disturb him. So I got up and dressed quietly, and the dog and I slipped out to the backyard. I could see the professor's house from there. No lights were on, and everything was quiet. I wasn't comfortable though, so I went ahead and dialed. 25 rings, no answer. Damn. I knew then. I went back in and woke my husband. We walked to the house and knocked. Nothing. We had to phone the sheriffs. They broke in. The professor had died. Seemingly peaceful, in bed. Because of our unincorporated location, any of the chores which would fall to professionals in an urban area are taken up by neighbors here. So, that evening, with the deputy's supervision, the families on our block began to sort through the professor's papers. We needed the deed to his burial plot and any kind of will or link to distant relations. I looked through a small scrapbook of old photos that was on his nightstand. There was no cousin Marco from the old country or nephew Bob, NYC 1997. It was mostly pictures of Elena and the professor, and they're never spoken of young daughter Maria, who had died in Oaxaca in 1971.